Given the subject material that is presented in this film and what the film is actually about, I think it's rather lame. I really don't think there's that much content in this film to be too concerned about. Well, that's how I'm calling it anyway. So starting with the violence, there isn't a whole lot of violence, despite the fact that our protagonists, or you might call them antagonists, depending on how you feel about these guys, travel into a war zone. So they go into Iraq. Yeah, they get shot at, but it's kind of comically presented more than anything. You don't really get a sense of fear or that they're in any real danger. I mean, obviously, because there's war zones, you do see a lot of military vehicles and aircraft and personnel. So you know it's a war zone, but you don't really get a sense of much trouble, if you like. There's a few scenes of fighting in the film. There's a bar fight, and there's a scene where a guy has been kidnapped and put into a boot of a car, and you see him get a little bit of a punch in the face. And out of that, you see some bruising, a few bloody noses, but again, that's really it. I mean, one guy gets kind of wrestled onto a glass coffee table. But as I said, I mean, the violence really isn't that strong in this film. If anything, the scenes that probably or potentially cause more concern are some scenes at the beginning of the film which show a lot of archival footage from wars. So you see some snapshots of Vietnam War, World Wars I and II, the Iraq War, you know, that kind of stuff. So if those, you know, particular episodes mean anything to you personally, if you've lost someone that went to war, then yeah, that might affect you more than any of the scenes shown in the film. On to sex and nudity. You don't actually see any sex scenes take place. In one scene, a man opens a door and says to his friend that he's currently with a prostitute, but you don't see anything. In regards to nudity, you see a woman sitting in the background who is possibly nude or very close to being near nude. You can't really tell, but you understand that there is a sexual relationship between these people, so she's probably nude. There's also a scene where a man is receiving a massage. He's face down on a massage table and he's nude. The towel falls off, so you get to see his rear end. Yay, but that's about it. There's people in swimwear in the film, some shirtless men, some cleavage. There's also a scene set in a bar where there's two women who are very scantily dressed dancing behind our two main characters. But again, that's pretty much it for sex and nudity. One woman is pregnant and has a baby. Well, you don't see her having the baby during the film, but you follow the pregnancy a little bit. You see her undergoing an ultrasound, and then you see her, you know, with the baby once it's born and the child once the baby's born. So, yeah, there's a theme there of pregnancy, but like I said, no sex in the film. I think there's some kissing, but that's about it. Drugs and alcohol are probably a little bit more heavy in the film than the other themes. Drugs, there's quite a bit of drug taking in the film. You see people snorting white powder, you see people smoking bongs, you see drug deals take place, you know, kind of a bit of everything. And there's a fairly frequent amount of this throughout the film, so this is fairly consistent, the idea of drugs and drug taking and intoxication and being high, you know, all of that. Alcohol as well, even though you don't really see a lot of drinking, there's a presence of alcohol in the film. So you'll see in the background or in a club setting, you'll see bottles of alcohol, mostly spirits, beer and wine. You do see two men drinking beer occasionally, but it's not a particularly strong theme, not so much as the drugs is. And finally, smoking. There's a little bit of smoking in the film, and gambling. There is one scene set at a blackjack table and inside a casino. The other thing is the swearing. The swearing's fairly heavily in the film, but not as heavy as a lot of other films with similar themes to this one. The F word is used a few times, the N word is used once, S word, A word, and, you know, just a few name-calling words and terms as well, a couple of religious references and some obscene finger gestures. So overall, fairly kind of common stuff, nothing particularly out of the ordinary. And if anything, I think this film is actually a lot less offensive than I expected. I thought there'd be sex scenes, I thought there'd be the C word, you know, I thought it would be, you know, much more boundary pushing in terms of the contents, but it's actually fairly light on compared to what I thought it was. It's a fairly good film, it's very, very easy to watch. Interestingly enough, critics outside the US seem to be enjoying this film much more than critics inside the US. I'd say that's because it deals with national security in the US and the procurement of weapons. And most of us outside the US understand that Americans are fairly sensitive when it comes to their military and also weapons purchasing and so on. So I'm curious, if you are American or in America watching this film or outside of America, I'm curious to see what your thoughts were, because I actually found this a really entertaining story and a really interesting story, despite the implausibility of it, even though it is a true story. So leave me your thoughts and let's have a chat about what you thought about the film. There's a more detailed breakdown, of course, on my website, which is cinemum.net.